y'all? Welcome back to the podcast where we give you the meat and taters of urban culture from a millennial point of view. We're talking substance, the entree, the full plate. And today we are sitting down for a Black History table talk. And no, not the February only bulletin board quoted version. We're talking about the real story and the division and that we don't always admit to if we're being honest, Black history didn't stop. It evolved, it got rebranded, it went digital, it got hashtags. As you listen today, I want you to think about this. Are we preserving Black history or performing it? Are we building a legacy or just building a platform? So pull up a chair, let's eat. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you to the podcast. So we have Mr. Williams, we have Miss Burgess, and we have Miss Wright. Thank you, beautiful people, for coming on the show. All right, so I have a couple of talking points. So let's dive right in. So the first one is about unity. All right, so the question is, what happened to the unity of the Black community? Is it because modern society is more woke to the social climate or just ignorant about their history? What happened to the unity with the Black community?
We accepted desegregation. Uh, I think that was because when we had, believe it or not, some people may not believe this, but when we were segregated, we were we had we were forced to. So we had our own, and we could only support our own, right? So we were building Black wealth in our communities because that no one else wanted our money, right? And you see it in other communities; they still do it. That dollar, we talk about how far the dollar goes around in each community. Uh, when we accepted desegregation, and we were able to now go as quote unquote make it and leave the Black community or leave our community and go behind these gates uh, to be accepted into other housing markets. Uh, we lost a lot. We lost a bit of ourselves, a lot left with us. Because before, like I said, you had teachers, doctors, lawyers, everybody was in the same community, right? It didn't matter that on one street, then that's where all the doctors and lawyers were, and then on the next street, that's where the blue collar people, they were all living in the same community. So I knew if I needed something to work on my car, it was my neighbor. My children went to school, their teachers were living and working in the same community, or my next door neighbors.
Yeah.
So when that happened, it took a lot of the soul out of the community, and we were left with, we didn't have the same amount of resources, and that's what we see today.
Okay, ladies, what do y'all think? What happened to the unity?
Um, I agree with him. I look at it as the unity is still here. It definitely looks different. But going back to what you're saying, when you look at it, I remember just speaking from my mother's street where she grew up on. Everyone on that street was an educator, with the exception of her parents. So when you imagine you are going to school, everyone at the school knows your family, taught by individuals that look like you. We have the same morals, we have the same values,
Yeah.
and you see a systematic um, disruption in the unity. Kind of like it was done. It was a planned attack,
Mm-hmm.
break apart the unity of what we had.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Kamari, did you
Even
want
with
to speak on?
laws
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
and
Go ahead. That last part didn't come in clear. Can you say it again?
when you look at the laws that were implemented,
Mm.
and when you're thinking about the history. I looked this up about some months ago. I was reading an article about majority of Black individuals who had a college degree were educators. So whenever we started to mix our school, majority of those educators were let go because of law. What happened to their what happened to their career now?
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
Mhm. I guess for me, one of the things that I've seen within the Black community is when we stop listening and trusting one another. A lot of us feel like we're above correction and accountability. So if you are preaching to me or talking to me about something that would require me to be held accountable or
Mm-hmm.
require me to face some hard truths, um, I may not want to listen and I may not receive it. So a lot of the unity begins to be broken down that way, because then you have the whole thing around, well, they're a sellout, or they think they're better than me. It's like, well, if I'm trying to give you some advice on how to do something and you don't want to take it, then that's kind of on you. So it's like, for me, some of the things that I've seen is us just simply not wanting to listen to one another and take accountability for some of our actions. And
Mm-hmm.
like I'm sorry, like Janelle and Mr. Williams said, it's, systematic. And it's like it started with desegregation. And when desegregation moved in, I think that's when we began to be invited into spaces, just for noteworthiness. We began to be invited in those spaces. So when we began to
Mm-hmm.
bring that information back to our people, they didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to listen to it. So I think some of the trust was lost. And then, when trust is lost, that's when your whole unity and
Mm-hmm.
unification begins to break down and fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I definitely agree with all of those points. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I want to know about reparations. Do you believe that Black people need reparations? Would it have an effect on the economic infrastructure? What do we think about that? Do we still need reparations? Do we still need our 40 acres and a mule? Or
Yes.
are
Yes,
we good?
full
Or have
stop.
we
Black people
assimilated?
need reparations.
Please talk to the
Full
people.
stop.
Please talk. Do we need
Universal,
the 40 acres?
basic income for everybody. America can do it. We send the money everywhere else. We got it. We can do it. Full. That's it. We can do it.
Okay.
So I can't speak for everybody, but if you recall, when we came out of slavery, you were the only ones that knew families got land,
Mm-hmm.
families got acres, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they were the only ones that could work it. The white man couldn't work it. The slave masters couldn't work it, so they were giving it away, right? You have families now to this day that are still operating on the fact that that land was passed down through their ancestors from when they left slavery, and a lot of it was lost due to ignorance, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you had to pay taxes on it, so now it's stolen. Somebody come, I mean, they did it to a lot of people. They did a lot of people. Uh, so I always chuckle when it comes down to reparations because I was like, in reality, a lot of families received those quote unquote 40 acres and a mule,
Mm-hmm.
but lost it over time,
All right.
right?
So, Mr. Williams, my question to you would be: were there more families that received land than families that fell into the debt cycle of sharecropping?
What so so reality is you didn't have as many sharecroppers as they like to make you believe because we so the thing was
No,
about
I just asked: were
sharecropping.
there more families that went into sharecropping than there were families that had got land?
Oh, you broke up. I
Because
apologize. You broke
essentially,
up.
you want to do what's the greatest good for the greatest number. So if more families had more land than sharecroppers, that would have been good. But if there were still more people that were through into the sharecropping debt cycle, was that a net positive for us?
What? Well, sharecropping was not a positive. right? So no, if I'm hearing you right, because
No, I meant
you broke.
the families that got the land. Was that a net positive for all of us?
No,
If more families still ended
some
up as
were
sharecroppers.
yeah, no, some were just it was theirs. It was gifted over to them, right? Because they couldn't work it. Um, and then you had also had some who didn't get land, but they were able to obtain the machines. So, like my great grandfather, he broke horses. That's what he did. He was a man that could break a horse, right? That's what he was known for around town. So he owned a horse, and that horse was his moneymaker, right? That horse was his moneymaker. So he never had to sharecrop because he had a horse, So sharecropping was really just I have, if the landowner has the equipment, then he's like, yeah, you can come work the equipment, but you gotta rent it out, right? But those people who understood the concept of owning the horse and understood that they could own the ox, or they could, what I'm saying, and things of that nature, and they had the plow and things that they didn't sharecrop, right?
Right.
But no, again, sharecropping wasn't it, but you had a lot of families that were able to get land, right?
Right. No,
And
I
then
understand that.
you had
I understand that. Now, what I'm saying in terms of reparations, I'm sorry, I'm in the gym, but we view reparations as it's supposed to be a benefit for descendants of African American slaves, right? That's just what it is,
Right,
correct?
right,
We all on the same page with that, right? So
right. Yeah.
that's the claim. Was it still needed? So when you said you laugh at reparations, because you have to think about us as a whole. You laugh at it in the context of, yes, some families did receive land because no other people could work it, but in the terms of everyone, or even explicitly us as descendants, was that positive for those families that got it more of a positive as a whole for us, or was sharecropping more of a negative as a whole for us? Is what I'm asking. Like, so
share,
yeah, some families got some land, but
sharecropping.
if the majority of us were still like our ancestors in a debt cycle, what was the good of some people getting land?
So if you had land again, but if you had land and you were able to figure out a way to keep it for generations, right? Whether or not it
Right,
started off as sharecropping, and then but you were able to figure out a way to keep that land, and then you would
right,
pass it
right,
down. Because reality is, a lot of families lost land that was given to them, right? So whether or not it doesn't matter how you obtained it initially, if you're able to hold on to it, then that's there goes. We all know that land is king, right? If you have land, then you can sell
right,
it off in parcels,
right.
right? But if you
So,
lose it somehow, if you lose it through
right,
ignorance, if you lose it through selfishness from the next generation, right? Because say you have the land, you're the great grandfather, you have the land, you pass it on to your siblings or to your children, and they
Yeah.
say, and all of them say, we don't own it,
right,
Can
right?
I
Then you have five, right? You have five siblings. So that's five
Hmm.
generations ago. Those five siblings now, their offspring could be 100, 200 people.
right,
I
right. And so,
oh
in
God.
those terms, if their offspring are 200, 300 people, and the land is no longer there, and the ramifications of slavery do still exist in our society today, I think the argument for reparations would essentially still be there because the land that was earned, whether it was still kept or lost, didn't completely remove the effects of chattel slavery, and we are the descendants of those people.
I mean, Janelle,
I just want to say that when you're looking at reparations as for the whole,
Hmm.
I from both perspectives what they're saying is just to me what Mr. Allen is speaking of is just like one perspective, right? I finished reading. Well, I reread. I probably read the book about 3 times. I think it's called Up from Slavery, Booker T. Washington. When you have the sharecroppers, that really just benefited the individuals in the South. Not all received some land. So for the ones that did receive the land, when you're using the word, when you say a lot of us lost the land because of ignorance, but at the same time, what were what were our education on it when we used the word ignorance because we weren't afforded the same knowledge as other individuals during that time. So I see it as just both ways. I feel like we are in a time where if you're looking at what Indians receive, and that's another thing to even. So, for example, I know for a fact my great great grandfather is a native Cherokee Indian, right? Um, you, a lot of us can't even prove that. But when you see the type of college funds that are
True.
received, so even if it's not the acres, 40 acres in a mule, just having some type of incentive to be able to
Right.
go out to college. So now that you
Yeah.
aren't moving forward. So that's just my 2 cents on it.
No,
Can I?
I agree with you on that.
I was
I
just trying
agree
to
with
get
that.
clarity. Alan, you were saying that to like, at the beginning, you were saying that we do not need them. Because I,
Do
I
not need
understood everything else you were saying, but say it again.
reparation.
Yeah.
I think on a smaller on some on what most people think, and I'm not saying everybody, but most people think of it. That's not what's needed to close the gap, right?
Right.
What's needed to close the gap is something like what Ms. Janelle mentioned. How do we set what? Don't give me 40 acres. I ain't working it. Don't give me no mule. I ain't working it. But if you can give my children a college fund, if you can give them housing, you know, things where they don't have to start from zero,
From scratch.
right? If you can take away, because if you're talking about the Kennedys and they were bootleggers, they were criminals. So take away the criminality of the things that some of our ancestors did and give us that back, right? Give those families. So if you had a person who went to jail uh, because he was a criminal, but he had created an empire,
Mm-hmm.
a criminal empire. Do the same thing you did with the Kennedys. Let him get that money. Let them people get that money, right? Because in reality is a lot of the billionaires that we see old school money, they were all crooks. They were all crooks. They were all criminals. They just didn't get prosecuted for it, right? So
Hmm.
give my kids a step, give our children a step up to be able to close the gap faster because it's proven. It is
Right.
proven when the playing field is equal, when the
That's
playing field is equal, our students excel at a great rate. That's why they took off things like on TV. That's why they took off things like the positive shows like Different World and things like that. They saw a huge spike in African Americans going to universities and college, and then they were like, "Oh, we can't have this kind of positivity out there in the
Mm-hmm.
world because they'll end up closing the gap." You know, so
Hmm.
you had
right.
more first time college attendance during that time frame in the 80s when 80s and 90s when a different world was on TV. So I mean it's systematic, but like I said, give my kids a step up, give my kids a step forward.
Something to
I
level the
think
field. I mean, because
Yeah.
you still see, you think like the impact is 1,000 years ago. I mean, it just was in my mother's generation, my
Hmm.
grandparents. That's to me is just like yesterday
Right.
with what we are speaking about. And
well,
again,
I think
looking at the north and the south, when you level the playing field, even just having that home that you were afforded to be able to pass down generations, and we
Yeah.
didn't have it.
Yeah.
Some of us did, but some of us didn't. And I think it goes back to your first question when it comes about unity, having respect. And then what Mr. Allen just said, now everything is negative. I used to tell my kids, my sons, if I tell you everything black is negative, what is that doing mentally, right? The black ages, where, okay, if you have this black person that can remember 300 pages, but it wasn't written down, every statistic is going to continue to be a fact because it's a statistic. But does it really represent the truth?
Right.
Hmm.
I think one of the best ways right now, because
Positive
realistically,
way. Now,
we we probably won't get reparations. I think many people probably think reparations would be some type of check. I don't think it would be that. I think the best way to move forward would be allowing progressive policies without intervention. Um, Full stop. That's we just need policies that allow us essentially just leave black people alone. When we are left alone, we thrive in our own communities. Our own communities do great. Like a lot of the downfalls of many black communities is just literally no shade to integration, but integration or some type of government intervention. Left to our own, we are fine.
Yeah.
We're better. And just to get back to reparations, segue. Black America is literally the pulse of if nobody else deserves a check, us here we deserve a check. We are the pulse of the culture everywhere. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hmm. It's heavy right there. I'm on both sides of the fence. Like I'm more so on the side with the we deserve reparations because even if we, like Alice said, even though we don't want, to work that land, if we don't want to work the mule per se, I still feel like in order we still need a heads up on just to level, like you said, the playing field. So future generations that we have not seen yet, I feel like it would just give them a greater advantage. Even if they don't want the land, even if they don't manifest it into something greater that we think is greater for them, I still think like Lionel said, because we are the descendants of, I feel like we deserve it. I feel like we deserve that much. Like I said, even if the future generations that we have not even seen yet do not want or want the land, or how to can actually see how they would use it for better, or depending on the situation, because we don't know, we're talking about future generations. I still feel like I'm more so on the side of that's what we deserve because of how things were and how our people just need that, because we don't have affirmative action anymore. DUI has been rolled back, all of that. HBCUs getting less funding, all of that. So with all those things going on, the rollback of DEI, no affirmative action. I agree with everyone, but I kind of am going back to what Mr. Leonard is saying, that just still give us our due. Give us our due. And I feel like that's what we deserve.
You,
All right,
you,
so my next point, everyone, is
no,
about
before we leave this, real
uh-huh.
quick, before we leave this, you know, instead of instead of getting reparations, I would actually prefer to destroy all the systems because it's the systems that have been age old systems,
Yes.
education,
Which one?
Yes.
all, all
Yes. Yes.
all the systems that are in place have. So you have to tip your hat to the founders of America, right? Because they created a system where they looked at past empires and they said what destroyed the Roman Empire, what destroyed the Greek Empire, what
Mm,
destroyed those empires, and what destroyed those
right.
empires were the people, the revolts by the people. So they made a system where the people have a a sense of power, even though they really don't have power, and they made systems that no matter how much change you have, the status quo is going to remain the same, where white landowners are always at the top, right? So if you really
Mm,
want to bridge the gap and you want true reparation, destroy all the systems and start from square one with with the diversity in the people who we have in this
agreed.
country now.
Agreed.
Let them recreate the system, because because you put a fair, and that's their fear. If they put a fair system in place,
Yeah.
they put
Yeah.
a true fair system in place where everybody has the equal opportunity to succeed,
Yeah.
they wouldn't, because they're
Mm,
not innovative. They're not there. There's no soul. A lot of them are
yeah.
soulless. A lot of people are soulless. Like they have no intervention. They can't think outside the box. They weren't blessed with certain things, certain attributes that we were. So
Yeah.
they're afraid of, while they claim they want to
Mm,
destroy systems, and that's what they're doing. They actually know if we destroy these systems and really rebuild them properly,
mm-hmm.
they will get left behind. They think they're act. I may be one of few. Some things that are happening are beneficial for us because they're destroying the system, and now we have a chance. It gives us the chance to, if we can get a seat at the table, rebuild a system from scratch, and that's powerful. Because if we have say so, and they take away some of these things that they have already to hold us back,
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, oh man, it can be a really, you can see real change
Yeah,
for people with melanated skin.
I know that's right. I agree with that. All right, listen, y'all. Let's talk about black leaders. Do current black leaders in America truly represent the needs of the black community, or have they become more symbolic than as opposed to effective? More symbolic as opposed to effective. So let me throw out some names real quick. I am not a politics person. I try to stay away from politics when it comes to Democrat versus
No, you.
Republican, things like that. I'm not that girl. I don't like politics. But let me throw out some names when we talk about current black leaders. Jasmine Crockett, Cory Booker. When it comes to media, Roland Martin, Stephen A. King. When it comes to former presidency, I'm thinking about Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Kamala Harris. I'm just throwing out some names. So some people are saying that, and also Raphael Warnock, recent senator. Some people are saying that Obama was representation, and people are saying that Barack Obama was symbolic. He was representation. They were saying even if he doesn't do anything, just the fact that we had representation was enough. But was that really enough?
Well,
So,
of course it. I'm sorry. What
Did
you
he
saying?
really do? Did these people really do advance? The livelihood of black people in this community.
can I, so one first, let me, we lost the late great Jesse Jackson just recently, so I want to first
Right.
pay homage to him and the things that he did to
Yes.
uh, move the fight along, right? But two, the problem isn't the leaders. The problem is, tell me what when you go back to before desegregation, right? The black community had one voice. They were all fighting for the same thing. Like we need this, we need education, we need.
That was,
Everybody was fighting for the same thing.
which
So
is,
so it's easy to lead when you have one goal,
yeah,
One
right?
band, one sound.
What's the goal? What's the goal of the black community now? I'll wait.
Hmm.
we all have an opinion on it.
I know.
We all have an opinion.
So
Uh,
I
how
can't
can
even
we
tell
can't
you. I
blame
can't tell you.
we can't blame the people who are taking the mantle and trying to move it forward because they're talking about a section of the people who are supporting them. Like, hey, this is what they want, so I'm going to fight for that, right? But we're all divided. You have people who are saying, "Well, this I don't want that. I want this." So it's a lot harder now because there's not one voice coming out of the community. When you're talking about, I've heard people get on Barack Obama like, "Man, he just pushed the LGBTQ agenda." You know why? Because they had one voice. They were fighting for
What
one
cause?
thing. Everybody was aboard that one thing. And then once they got that thing done, they moved to step number two and got that accomplished. When you talk about the black community, you can't find a single person that can say, this is what the black community is fighting for. And everybody say, or a majority of black people in America will say, yes, that's right. That's what we want. That's what we're fighting for. You're going to have a third over
well,
here be like, no, that's what it is, and a third over here to say, no, that ain't what it is. So that's why
Mm.
that's to me that's the problem.
because yeah,
It's
we're
not the
resting.
leaders.
Black people aren't a monolith thing. I think we done took that and ran with it. And it's like, no, sometimes we do need to be a monolith. Like sometimes group think or collective bargaining or whatever you want to call it
Yeah.
is necessary. That's how other groups like the trans community, like other minority groups, are able to get their agendas pushed because, like Mr. Adams just said, they have one message. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dr. King's economic plan. I only bring it up because I literally like just started reading about it sometime last year, and I was like completely blown away. Now I knew based on his last speeches, he was leaning towards democratic socialism. But like, my God, man, what he's talking about 50 years ago is what AOC is talking about, what Bernie Sanders has been talking about, because Bernie Sanders ran with him. So everything this man was
Mhm.
saying, and we're seeing it more and more now, like not even on some rising tide lifts all boats things. It's just if you invest in people, if your government works for people, people will work. The country will thrive. We don't have a government that's really invested in us thriving. They're invested in us producing.
Yeah.
And the
Agree.
corporate Democrats, all those people, symbolic, representative or not, that's all the boat they're in. We need more AOCs, even though she's a person of color, but we need more Jasmine Crockett's if we're going to go the corporate Democrat route. We need some more loudmouths out there because let's be honest, that we need that. We need that, and we need that astounding because the regular game of politics is not the same anymore. It's not.
Mm. Mari, what you think?
Well, I would have to agree with Mr. Allen, and I'm sorry I didn't catch it. Is Lionel? Is it Lionel? Is,
Lionel,
is that his name?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it when it comes to, I would have to say, like, the leaders, a lot of the late great leaders are late and gone. You know what I'm saying? And so we don't have many up and coming. Because when you look at people like Jasmine Crockett, Cory Booker, those individuals, they're getting up in age, let's be honest, to where they're gonna start wanting to go and do other things with their lives eventually, because to not have a single goal, for like one goal for the Black community, that can be exhausting, because what exactly are we fighting for at this point? I know at one point,
Yeah.
as a collective, we had police brutality. We were all fighting against police brutality and profiling, profiling Black people based on how they look, and automatically thinking that,
Yeah.
Black criminal or Black equals thug. So at
Yeah.
one point we were all fighting for that. And so when we started to see, or when they started to hand us a few results here and there, we kind of backed up off of it, because they already know, within this system that they have built, it's like, we don't have to do much. Just give them this, give them that, and then they'll
Mm-hmm.
back off, because each and every time, something, because it's still happening. We may
Mhm.
not hear about it as much, but it is definitely still happening. But because they threw us a few bones with sending a few people to jail here and there, we backed off of it. And so now it's like, what is the fight now? Because there's a story recently where an unarmed teenager, I don't know if he was a teenager, he might have been like 18. He was gunned down by police as they were pinning him down. And they
Mhm.
claimed that he had a weapon, but he didn't have a weapon. And that happened here recently. So it's like, we don't hear about it a lot. So a lot of us are just distracted by, what we have and going on in our own lives. I'm not going to lie, I'm one of those people. It's like, I don't know what all the Black community wants. I just have to focus on what I want right now in my life, and go on from there. And I think, the politicians that we are looking up to are eventually going to get to that point too. And then, what new leaders are we bringing in? What new leaders and generations are we raising up? And it's like, I don't see it. I don't see it, because everybody has their own agenda. Everybody has their own thing that they
Yeah.
are doing right
Yeah.
now. And it's like, how can we really begin to raise up a generation of leaders, Black leaders at that will begin to tear
Right.
down those systems and rebuild our community and bring us all back together and do the things that really need to be done, one thing at a time. Because I know a lot of the issues in the Black community, they can't be tackled all together. You have to break it down in small snackable pieces. Y'all know I like my snackable pieces, because you can't bite it off at one time. We need to just really sit down, and maybe even have a forum of, a lot of people within the community to see like what are our real grievances and what are our real problems that we have, and then start to make a list and go from there.
I, I
Agreed.
add, you ask about does more than representation matters, and for me it does. I mean, representation always matters. When you see individuals, when young kids get to see individuals in certain leadership positions that look like us, and that's in every walk of a career, it matters. But at the same time, we can march. That is the action. But what makes the change is the policy change, it's the law change. So having individuals in there knowing that our vote matters, that's going to be able to make the change on that on the policy level. I mean, even Martin Luther King said he feared he integrating his people into a burning house once he became radical with that economic transformation that needed to happen. So for me, the local politicians is where I tend to focus more of my attention. It at the national level, it definitely matters. But I feel like if we start locally and getting our youth involved, that's we'll get to the point where we are able to make our vote matter at the top. Because if someone is voted in with promises of what they are going to do for our people, the expectation is whether we are united for one cause or 10 causes, is that it's done, because hence the reason why we voted you in. But I think
Right.
we as people sometimes do not put a lot of emphasis on our local leaders having that impact at the community level, because those are the ones that we're going to see, we're going to hear, we're going to have that relationship with, to be able to inspire the next generation. And
And Miss Janelle, to add to your point, when we hear about all these we hear about all the civil rights movements and things and the sit-ins and marches and things of that nature. You got to remember those were happening. Started off with one city,
right,
and word spread like, oh, this is what we doing.
like
Yeah, this
fight.
is what we're doing, right? And then people said, well, we doing it too. You
Mm-hmm.
know, just like that the policing the that system. We all know that it started from built out of slavery through the Ku Klux Klan and all those things. But that
Yeah.
the way we police is another system. And I'm not saying defund the police. I have a lot of people I know that are police officers and they do a fabulous job protecting our community, right? But we have to look at the minutia of
Yeah.
the system that
Mm-hmm.
is policing, right? And break that down. And I think that was a missed opportunity to both of young ladies' points. I think that when things were happening in Minnesota and in Milwaukee, I think it was a missed opportunity for that small community
Right,
to really make a very large voice. And then once they make the large voice, then that's when we, as everyone else, that's when we jump on the bandwagon
right,
and we force our police departments to look at their policies, look how they're policing. And that's how it's small changes. And then you get a small change here, you get a small change there in different places. And we start to celebrate like, hey, they changed it. They changed it. They implemented this. And you start seeing it spread across the United States. And that's how it gets, the argument gets to the federal government. And it
Hmm.
becomes a major movement, a major uh, piece of history, but it starts off with the small bus boycotts,
yep,
the garbage worker boycott out of Memphis. Like those were just one place that spread across the United States because they saw what we were doing and we're trying to get effect change. So like I said, to both of your points, I think they were great. That's what we could do. I think that's the place. I think that's the road we have to go to.
Do you all think that when it comes to Black leaders, that some African Americans are just either whether it be a confidence thing or just be and out of touch with core values as a community? Could that be part of the situation? And I asked that because I just looked up, so we talked about leaders as far as like legislation, and we got to change, like you said, change the system, the policies, things like that. So we have somebody in place, Clarence Thomas. Lina, I know you teach social studies, so Clarence Thomas, U.S. Supreme Court, and just some quick facts, and then I'll get to my point. So he was appointed by under the Bush administration in 1991, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. He's the second Black justice in history following Thurgood Marshall. And so there are some points that they say, positions that say that some say help Black Americans. I read those, and then I read there are some positions that many critics say harm that he has that harm Black Americans. And some of the things that he opposes as far as Clarence Thomas is opposition to affirmative action, voting rights decisions as well. He argued that even further than the majority, that key parts should be struck down. Many civil rights groups believe this led to voting restrictions that disproportionately affect voters. He also, when it comes to race conscious policies, Clarence Thomas consistently opposes government programs that explicitly use race as a factor. So when it comes to Black leaders, so he's pretty high up there. Like I said, Supreme Court Justice. Is he how do you all feel about him as a leader for us? Or is he like a, you know how you have like
He's not a leader.
house nigga versus field nigga like theories? Like, how do you feel?
So any publication that you have that says that Clarence Thomas has done anything to support uh, communities of color, you need to stop reading that publication right now. That's what the red hat people like to say, fake news. Okay. He has never done anything to support people who look like him. Now, I'm going to say this, and I know may not be a very popular view, but I think that one thing that we have to do as educated people of color is stop looking at things in the eyes of color, through the lens of color, right? Because since we've gotten got stolen from Africa and got brought here, right? We've always had people who didn't look like us that fought alongside us. Okay, you go back to the early revolts, slave revolts, and you always had people who understood, like, yo, they're human beings, right? And then you've always had people who were the ones who would run back and tell massa that we trying to escape, all right? That look just like us, okay? So as long as we look at things inside of a color lens, because it's a new concept, right? Division by race is a new concept when you're looking at the worldview, right? It was created by America. America made that division. Prior to America, it was money, right? You have kings and queens. You go back in history, you have black kings and queens, African kings and queens in Egypt, in Europe, right? In Europe, in Asia. So we have to get away with that, because as long as we only look at things in that lens, we fall in the trap that the massa created, right? We have to look at people based off of who they really are. And Clarence Thomas is an example, which I remember when Anita Hill went in front of that court and said, he ain't who y'all think he is, right? And a majority of people of color, oh, she's just trying to bring a black man down. We trying to. Years later, people looking at Anita Hill like, dang, we should listen to you, sis. You tried to warn us he wasn't who we thought he was. We were just so happy to get a black man in that joint, right? So we have to really do our due diligence on who are we going to support and who they are for real. Because just because they look, you know, the old saying, all skin folk ain't kinfolk, right?
I've heard that.
We
Yeah,
can't
I've
just
heard
look
that.
and just blindly support someone because they're black, or blindly support somebody because they're a woman. It shows you have women who support monogamy. What's the word? I'm thinking of They support more men's rights, right?
Mhm.
Misogyny, right? You have women who really believe that, like, oh yeah, men are great. We're supposed to. So just because they look like we have to start judging people off of who they are. And if they ain't with us, put them to the, it don't matter how they look, put them to the wayside. If they're with us, come on, let's go, let's ride. White, black, brown, yellow, pink, green, I don't care. If you with us, if you're with humanity and bringing the best out of the world and what this world can truly be, if you're on that, I'll ride with you. If you're not, send you to the left.
Yeah.
And Clarence Thomas is to
Mhm.
the left.
I hear you.
I hear you.
All right, can we talk about
All right, can
education
we
real
talk about
quick?
education real quick?
So my question is,
My question is,
um, let's talk about the class
let's talk
system
about
first. So we know what a
class
class
system
system
first. So we
is.
know what a
So
class
in
is.
this
So
particular context,
in
we're
this
talking about
particular
like a
context, we're talking about like
socio-economic
a socioeconomic
situation. Is there a
situation.
fundamental
Is there a
difference in
fundamental
the way
difference
that middle
in the
class
way
black
that middle class
families educate
black
their
families
children
educate their children
compared to lower class
compared to
families?
lower
So
class
I know for
families?
me,
I
and
know
some
for
of
me,
us on the panel,
and some of us on the panel,
um, work with
um,
children from
work with children from
a certain income
a
background, their
certain income
families.
background, their
But when it
families.
comes to the class
But when it
system, we
comes
talk
to the
about like
class
middle
system, we
class
talk about like
or
middle
versus
class
like lower class.
or
Is
versus
there a
like lower
difference in
class.
the way
Is
that
there
we
a
teach
difference
our
in the way
kids?
that we teach our kids?
Yes, because
I
resources
think
matter.
that things are
I think that
priorities are
things
different
are
from different socioeconomic classes.
priorities are different.
Not that we can throw like upper class in it, but like there it's more networking skills. In middle class, it may be more soft skills or managing skills, but in lower class, even though we know now that working with your hands is a
You
6 figure
know,
income. Like for a lot of lower class people, that's where they say that's where the money is, but it is where the money is. But if you're coming from a place where you're only going to work, you're not value education. If you grow up and all you see is my folks going to work, I gotta go get a job. I might want to go because I might want to I can go be fulfilled because we don't talk about fulfillment a lot in this country because we're wired to just go to work and produce. So if all we see is work, 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 you're not going to value education as much as someone who is taught from the beginning that education is paramount. If you can understand, if you can read and comprehend and ask questions and investigate, nobody can trick you. But that, like critical thinking, isn't taught in every household. It varies on socioeconomic classes. It does.
I know you're right. I know you're right. Critical thinking. Sometimes you just be like, where is the critical thinking? Like these parents. Sorry.
But you got to remember, resources and access matter, right? So, if I have the resources to exposure, right? I remember when I started in education, I asked, so, hey, what'd you do for spring break? Oh, we went out of town. Oh, really? Where'd you go? They went to the south part of the county. That was out of town. For my kids, that's a day trip,
They went where
right?
to South what?
So they went to the south part of the county,
Oh.
right? We're on the north side of the county. They went to the south part of the county. And that was, oh, we went on a trip, right? So it's all about perspective and access and resources and what you've been exposed to, right? If you've never seen a mountain, you don't know what a cliff is.
True.
If you've never seen snow, you know what a snowman is, but you don't know how to make one, right? So it's about access and resources. So yes, you're going to teach your students, your children differently based off of your access and your resources. I have my goddaughter, she's bilingual because her parents have access, right? They have resources to be able to teach her at a young age the value of multiple languages. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, there's gonna be different. That's why they have private schools, so they can be different, right? Not better, just different. Do you have to work harder when you don't have that leg up? Absolutely, you have to work harder, but it doesn't mean that you gotta stay there. Where you are doesn't define where you're going. Because a lot of them people who have that access, you know where they end up? They end up in drug rehab, coked out, because that is also access. So they have access to other things, other distractions. So
Mm.
yes, there's always going to be a difference when it comes down to education. But we have shown time and time again, we don't necessarily need your upper hand because we know how to get ours.
If I could add to that, I also think
I
with
also
the
think
different
with the different
class of people,
class of
it's also
people,
about how
it's
we
also about
view
how
and
we
value
view and
education.
value education.
Because I grew up in a low income community. I grew up with a single parent that
Mhm.
we didn't have access to much and we did not have many resources. However, from that, I still graduated from high school, went on to college, got a master's degree, and, went out and tried to live, or I am living the American dream, as they would call it. So it's like when I look back at how my mom
Mm.
looked at education, how she viewed education, and how I was taught, it was a value thing. And I think a lot of the value
Yeah.
in education has been
Yeah.
lost over time because again, I went to elementary school in the 90s. Okay, I went to elementary school in the 90s. So it was like,
Girl.
it was the 90s. It's like your elementary school teacher was right. I didn't have a black teacher until I got to maybe fifth grade. And that's because I actually moved out of the neighborhood that I was living in. But
Mm.
yeah, I come from that. I come from lack of resources, lack of access, but the value that was placed on education because we were taught by those around us that if you a lot of millennials, because my husband was taught the same thing. A lot of my friends from college were taught the same things. You go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, you make a
Mm.
lot of money.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
Yeah.
So a lot of emphasis and value was placed on education within my household. And I think that over time, when things evolved and when there became more than a few ways to make money, people
Mhm.
evolved as well and they started to put less value, unfortunately, on education because here in recent
Yeah.
social media trends, there have been people saying that we don't need to teach children to read. They'll just, they can just get on their tablet or they can have stuff read to them. I
Right.
never forget when I was teaching, I had a parent who said that she doesn't understand why her child's test scores are so low because when they're watching a movie, you can ask the child a question about the movie and they can answer it. So I don't know why her test scores are so low
Oh
because
wow.
it was a movie, maybe. It
Right.
is something that is fictional. It is something that she can see and hear. But if you put a passage in front of that child's face and they attempt to read it, they don't understand, they don't comprehend. Even if you don't want your child or your student to go to college or anything like that, you may want them to be a business owner. Well, there are things that they're going to have to read and understand. Or they
Right.
can get somebody
Right.
else,
Exactly.
to read it for them. Again, you're taking value away from education and putting emphasis on it's all about, for many black people, it's about wealth. And we want to create generational wealth. However, we don't want to put emphasis on the education part of it. Even if you don't want your child to go to public, private, you want to homeschool them, do you, boo boo.
Right.
However, there still needs to be some value placed back in education, back into our educators where they feel empowered to
Yeah.
do and say certain things. So I think that along with giving them resources, access, we got to put value back in education, and
Yeah.
value in, you know, getting our children to read and want to do
Right.
math and want to do
Right.
science stuff, because our world is
Right.
headed towards a lot of tech,
Disaster.
a lot of
Disaster. Oh,
STEM, a lot of STEM stuff. Yes,
oh.
there will be disasters,
I'm
and the
sorry.
things that will
I'm sorry. I know you was getting to a point, but it is a little real bad from my lens. But go on. I'm sorry.
no. This world is headed towards STEM stuff. And there
Mm.
are a lot of programs now that are geared towards STEM, but if we're not placing value on that and we're not setting our own
Yeah.
kids up for success, and I can also, on the other side of the fence, if you don't know better, you
You
don't
don't
do
do
better.
better.
If you don't have access to better, then you may not. But again, I kind of got a little pushback with that too, because my mama didn't have better. There were many times we went without stuff. There were many times that, utilities were
Were
non-existent, those types
non-existent,
of things.
those
So
types of things. So
I still was able to,
still was able
despite not
to,
having access and
despite not having
resources,
access
I was
and
still able
resources,
to make
I was still
something
able to
of
make
myself
something
because
of myself
value
because
was placed on
value was
education.
placed on education.
And since I want to make sure I clarify, and that's why I said at the end, it doesn't, just because you don't have access and resources doesn't mean that you can't. Because all of our parents, no matter where they came, everybody who's in America right now, every black person, African American who came to America, all our parents started from the same. All of our ancestors started from the same place.
Mm.
They all got released from slavery, right? Our
Mm.
great grandparents, some of our great grandparents or grandparents all had third grade educations, right? Then at some point you start seeing that transition into college, right? But no matter what, and I just wanted to make sure the clarification is our what makes us beautiful and what makes us the best is the fact that no matter what it is, we can make it, and we have made it, and we've made it
Mm.
time and time again, over and over again. Or you don't give us access, you don't give us resources, not a problem. We'll find the access, we'll find the resources, and then we'll create our own access, we'll create our own resources, and then we'll
Yeah.
pass that on to the next generation. Yeah. Right? So it doesn't but does it change, but does it would your life, and not just talking about your life, okay, in a negative way, but if you think back to some of the things that you had to learn the hard way, it would have possibly been easier if you had resources and access. The success is the same. The end goal is the same. The journey's different, right? That's why all of us, we want to provide our children a better way to get there. Your mother did the best she could with what she had, and she made a way for you to be where you are today, right? Now, your goal and your job is for your children to make a better way and for them to get to push that narrative even further, right? So that's all we're trying to do. Almost most of us are a generation or two from the hood or from the ghetto, right? Or from slavery, or you know what I'm saying? Like, we're not that far from there. And I think sometimes that's lost on people. So I think that's lost. My great grandfather was released from slavery, right? I knew his son. His son was my grandfather, right? So when it comes down to descendants of slaves, we ain't that far off. We ain't been where we are that long. So I am, as bad as it may seem at times, I
Mm.
am overjoyed because I'm like, yo, 5 generations from now, my kids, shh, if this is where we are now,
It's gonna be nice.
where are they gonna be? Because
Yeah.
they gonna look at us like, why did y'all struggle like that? You know what I mean? So I just think that we just have we've been blessed with resilience, is people with color, and they can't take that away from them. No matter how much they try to do, no matter what they try to do, they can't take the resilience that's built inside of us. The people on this land that were released from slavery, we are the strong. We are descendants of the strongest of the strong that got stolen from Africa. Think about that. They took the strong.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them died along the way, right? Some of them jumped ship along
Yep.
the way. Our descendants landed here, survived 500 years of brutality and everything else, and we are here because of their faith and their belief. So we are the descendants of the strongest of the strong that left Africa, and that's hope. That's all the hope I need to keep pushing forward.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Miss Burgess, did you want to add to that?
Miss Burgess, did you
Or
want
they
to
pretty
add to
much
that?
said
And
how
I
you
think that's
kind of felt.
I
part
already pretty much said how you
that
felt.
I'm gonna just back to Malcolm X. Education is the passport to the future. For tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. And when there's obviously a significant difference when you're looking at the class of individuals, I put it back on educators. We know the struggles that come with being in a lower class, a middle. If you ask me, the lower and middle class all together right now, I feel like it's just two class. So if you aren't all the way in the high class, I'm putting us all in one. Let's just
Yeah.
take we been at a Title 10 school. I just think it falls back on us to be able to realize those struggles and to set the bar high and have high expectations for our students and to perform to those high expectations. When I listen to the stories that my mother have told me, that I hear from other elders, from other people just some years older than me that lived during the time of segregation, the expectation was high. The expectation was high. It did not
Yep.
matter what street you live on. It did
Mm-hmm.
not matter who your parents were. When you
Mm-hmm.
stepped in, the expectation was high.
Mm-hmm.
You'll always have the issues with the parents. I'm not going to get on the soapbox because I feel we're in a time where black mothers we step up with what we do not hold our children accountable for in
Yeah.
school. The
Yeah.
baby in them, the always trying to make an excuse for them. Yes,
Yep.
we love them, but we aren't doing any good when it comes to that. So I feel as though knowing what we're dealing with is just going to come back on us. When you come inside that building, you are with us more than you are with your parents. So I feel as though the same education, the same expectations that's on the other side can be in the lower class, and it should be in the lower class. I've witnessed schools that expectation is so high right
Yeah.
there in the
Yep.
exposure with just removing field trips. I mean,
Yeah.
like you said, exposure is everything. If you hadn't been to the beach, if I ask you to write about the smell of the beach, you have no clue.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So I just feel as though being an educator, it just falls back on me. We know what we're going to deal with when it comes to the households, but just um,
But just
being able to raise our students
being
today.
able to reach our students today.
Mr. Nail, can you say that what you said about us holding our kids accountable one more time for the people in the back? Just
We have
one
to
more
hold,
time.
have to
We
hold
have to hold the whole
we have to stop babying them. We have to stop telling the teacher what. Like I have a saying. I can tell you what's out of my child's character, but I never tell you what they won't do. Because at the end of the day, they are
Mm-hmm.
a child. And simply because you are a child, a human is going to make mistakes, but a child has to be guided. And I feel as though nowadays we are living in a time where the public school is providing free virtual education. If you don't trust the teachers to really do their job, there are so many options. Taking on that accountability as a parent too, to decide what's best for my child.
Right.
If I know my child has XYZ issues and I have them in this school, is this the best for my child? You know? So, but we just have to hold our children more accountable for their actions because you
Mm-hmm.
learn through consequences. We are who we are because
Yes.
we were given comfort.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of piggyback real quick, Ms. Burgess, what you said. I feel like the putting the value back in education is very important, holding our kids accountable, but we also have to allow the dads to be a voice. We got to allow the dads to be present, a voice, like all of that, full stop. Like they are needed, they are necessary. A lot of times when you have these parent teacher conferences, it's the moms. It's the mother, it's the mom, whatever the case may be, but we need the dads also when it comes to the accountability and the value placed back in education. When the as far as what I believe, the family structure is God, then, the parents, and then the children. So I just feel like we need to get to a place. We have a lot of situations where the parents are not married, so they're co-parenting. Okay, cool, that's fine. A lot of people are co-parenting, but still allow that the father to have input with the child when it comes to placing value on education. Even if the father is not a college graduate, he might just be a high school graduate or have his GED, but at least he is able to set the tone, set the standard, and be a representation of what education looks like. And I feel like we just need more programs in the lower income communities where the males are at the forefront. Let them talk. Like the thing that happened, I think it was Chicago, where the kids in the neighborhood like beat up that lady and her son on the way to school or something, and they were in an uproar because where are the parents? When these kids were beating down this lady, I don't know if she was pregnant or what, but she was walking with her kid. Where were the parents? Where were the, of these kids that thought it was cool to beat this lady up? So then they say, where were the parents? Then they say, where were the dads also of those kids that did that to that lady? They were single parents, single mothers whose children did that particular thing that happened. And they were like, well, if the dads were present in their life, or more, if they were more in their life, would that have really happened with those kids? To curve, I have a friend, Jason, he said something about curbing those negative traits and just instilling the fact that education is paramount, education is important. And I think if we hear that from more male figures, like from people like Alan and your friends, your friend group, cohorts, or whatever you want to call them, if we hear that mantra from more male figures, I think that will bring the community back to the conversation that needs to be had on a more serious note. Because as women, we can preach all day. A lot, kids in schools are hearing the female talk, they're hearing us talk and fuss and all the things. But I just feel like it will drive the value of education. It will it'll be drive home kind of
It'll
in a
be
in a
drive
deeper
home kind of
sense,
in
if
a
it's,
deeper
if it's
sense.
coming from the men of the
I'm
village, if
If it's
that makes
coming
any
from the
sense.
men of the village. If that makes any sense.
It does. I'm going to say this. I think there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack as far as um, the black males inside the community. Um, I do want to go make sure that this narrative of that has been around for so many years, that black fathers are not involved. Statistics show that black fathers, whether they're in the house or not, are the most involved in their children's lives. So I want to just make sure that we get that out there, that black fathers have always been there, and they've always been uh, active in their children's lives. Um, this is another whole podcast that we can talk about this, but um, things that I've seen in the past that uh, even as one who had a father in the household, um, we still had the deacons. We still had our deacons. We still had our coaches. Rec coaches. We still had the guys and the other men in the community. Right. It was a collective. Right. We've gone away from, in the community. It's not just the black. we've gone to get away from the village mentality, right? We've gone away from that and we feel like, oh, you can't say anything to mine,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You can't say, what do you mean I can't say? I see him doing wrong. You want me to not say anything? You want me to not say, hey, young man, pull your pants up. Hey, young man, don't throw a rock in the middle of the street. You may hit a car. You don't want me to say that? But then on the flip side, when he throws that rock in the middle of the street and he hits a car and the police are called and then he has to go to juvenile detention center.
Yeah.
Where the
Julia.
black men? Why ain't nobody say nothing? Why? Well, because you've put a muzzle on us and said that you don't want us talking to your children. So you know, there's blame. We could blame both sides. We could blame some single mothers. We could blame fathers not being present. We can blame the system, right, of making sure that fathers aren't present in the house, right? But the reality is, fathers were not always present in the house, but it was the community. The problem is we've gone away from that village mindset where, hey, if my child is in your presence and you see them doing something wrong, please say something
Correct.
to mine.
Correct them.
Please say something to mine. And when he comes back and says, well, Mr. Williams fussed at me, what'd you do? Because Mr. Williams ain't gonna fuss at you just for no reason. What did you do? Now it's, why are you talking to my child like that? You don't have no right
Mm-hmm.
to talk to my child like that. So as long as we're separated on that and we're in this individualism, in this isolationism of my child, I'm the only one who can talk to my child. Can't nobody correct my child. That's my
Yeah.
role. That's my responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna always have. We're gonna continue to have issues inside the community because we don't have a village. You
Yeah.
know, the
and I
village is what raised us.
right, and that's where I was going with that
Right, and
when
that's where I was going with that.
I was mother, because I don't take the side of oh, the single mother or the single father, because the last, if I could honestly, the last meetings that I've had to meet with parents, with students with issues, had both parents,
Hmm.
both parents.
Hmm. Okay.
But meaning when I say trusting us as educators, the mother, it's that village. And your
Yeah.
school village now is different from your community village. It may be different from the athletic community that they have. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the division that I see, which is not good or bad, not going on the side. But I remember in my community, you practice at your park, you played sports at your park. It was the same students at the school. So now you have kids going across town for just to play sports. That's a different community. That's going to have to be that village that we have to let be. And when I guess I say the mother, sometimes as a mother, the mama bear is just too much, even to the point where you're overstepping your husband when times where it's let him parent, or you overstepping the father. It's just that mother bear, and I still believe that by nature, a mama and a daddy, we are different when it comes to the child. And I still acknowledge that. And we both have a place in our children's life, and still coming down to the educators of us just being able to understand that dynamics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Agree. Agree. Mr. Leonard, I was trying to see. He said his phone died, so I don't know. He might not be able to jump back on. All right, so y'all, my last point, before we close, is about mental health. And I know sometimes for people that can kind of be like a touchy subject and whatnot when you talk about like mental health, generational trauma, things like that. So we know that slavery was a real thing. We know that segregation versus integration was a real thing. Are are those factors responsible for the current mental health problems in our community? And I just ask that because I see
Because I see
me being an
me being
educator
an educator
and seeing
and
children that
seeing children that
have a lot of
have a lot
what is it,
of
ADHD,
what is it, ADHD,
anxiety,
anxiety,
Alan, can you mute your mic? I think
Alan,
that's
can
where
you
the
mute
echo is
your
coming
mic? I
from.
think that's where the
ADHD. I see a lot of anxiety, depression. I've even talked to students that said, I didn't ask them, but as we were having a conversation, they said there was a point in time where they had suicidal thoughts or something like that. So I just know, like, when I was growing up, like with Kamaria, I was in middle school in the 90s, like between like 97, 2000, whatever. And then high school, like early 2000s, and I really don't remember the whole ADHD, bipolar, parents getting checks because their kids had issues, as they say. I don't remember that being a lot of the conversation growing up back then. Not to say that we didn't have our little problems and whatnot when we were coming up, but I see an uptick of students coming in with the ADHD, the occasional, suicidal thoughts and whatnot. My, child was being bullied and whatnot because, being called gay or whatever the case may be, or, just depression and whatnot. I know COVID-19 was a lot to handle when everybody was in the house, and, the virtual learning, and don't get me started on pandemic teaching. Y'all, please don't get me started on pandemic teaching. Jesus be offense. But I'm just saying, like, the mental health problem, even with the adults in the community. Like, this grown man just killed his mother. The lady was like 70, 80 years old, and had a grown the man was the adult child, and just killed his mother in cold blood. And the police went in the house and found her dead body. And I think they said that he had some mental health issues and whatnot. That is always the go-to defense when you hear a lot of cases, legal cases, pleading insanity. Sometimes it is a legit case where the person, I snapped or whatever, first 40, I snapped, whatever, and did something, in a split moment. But all of this, the mental health issues that we're seeing in our community, does it not seem like it's higher now than it was before, or is it just me?
I think that I want to first make this point that our parents suffered real trauma, right? You talk about seeing Malcolm killed, Martin killed, people uh, attacked by dogs, right? You attacked by dogs, people spitting on you because you try to walk to school. That's real trauma. And a lot of them did not go to therapy, right? And that trauma gets passed down. Okay, so I actually commend this generation for being in touch with their emotions and being in touch with their mental health. I think they're doing a fabulous job of bringing it to the forefront and saying, no, we are traumatized. There are traumas that when I get pulled over, when most people that are of color get pulled over by police, our our heart starts to skip a beat. We tense up. We freeze. That is trauma. Even if you ain't done nothing wrong. But the whole thought process of, I hope I come out of this interaction alive, that is trauma. And most of us ain't going to therapy for it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But I think that the chemical, so I'm going to put it out there. The chemicals that they put in our food are causing a lot of these things that we're seeing. Cause that's, when you're pregnant, that's coming through all the chemicals, all the phosphate, sulfate, fate, uh, ingredients that they're putting in our food for mass production. I think that is a part of the issue that is causing some of these things. And then you add on think about attention. So ADHD, some of us still have, some of us had it, and some of us still had it. But you know what happened when we went to church? You sat down for a whole 5 hours to listen to that preacher, and you better sat there quietly with no phone, no tablet. Your entertainment was the Bible or the hymnal. You would sit there and read songs That was your entertainment. So you learn how to sit there and keep that thing in control. So if I can sit in church on Sunday for 5 hours, someplace I didn't want to be,
Oh Lord.
right? And I really want to get up and move around because you can't run in church, you can't chew gum in church. You had so many rules that you things if you couldn't do. When I go to school, yeah, that
You
don't
didn't
mean
go
I
to
don't have any,
Tabernacle, did you?
You didn't go to Tabernacle, did you?
right? That don't mean I didn't have ADHD. That just means I learned how to control it. I learned how to control it because I was forced to. I had no choice but to learn how to do it. When you went out to the grocery store, your mama say, "Don't ask for nothing, don't touch nothing, and be by my side." And you walking in the store, and you in the store for hours, and you had to stay. If she turned around, you got to be right there. You learn how to follow directions. You know what I'm saying? So it's not their fault. Some of this stuff is not their fault. We want to blame this next generation, but it's not their fault.
It
We the
is
punk,
their fault, damn it, it is.
we the punk ass parents that allowing them to get away with some of this stuff. You know, this gentle parenting. Oh, I'm a gentle parent. Who? Gentle who? Right? Our parents, and listen, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't believe in corporal punishment. You ain't got to beat them. You got to spank them. But, man, there's only, listen, when my children threw a temper tantrum, they got stepped over. You can fall out on the floor all you want to. That's going to be the last time you do. I'm going to ignore you. You're not getting in the attention. So I think some of it is just we're trying to not do what our parents did as far as the way they discipline, but sometimes we lose the essence of uh, the importance of what they did, right? And we're allowing our children to have more of a voice. We're allowing them to speak and allowing them to be heard, which is great because they're little humans, right? They have an opinion, they have a voice, they have their, and they should be. I don't believe that children should be seen and not heard, right? That doesn't help them become great human beings in the future. But we have to deal with sometimes we have to make them do things that they don't want to do. We got to make them sit down. We got to make them, we got to take the tablet away from them because that constant, the best time we had when we went outside and played, because we made up games. We get tired. First thing you do, you start looking around like, hey, you want to do this? Yeah, let's do that. You made up games. You had to use your imagination to create fun. Now fun is getting fed into them. And then if they get tired of it, they change the channel.
Yeah.
That's what's causing some of the ADHD and some of the issues we're seeing is they're able to change the channel because they don't like it. We had 10 channels growing up and there was no remote. There was no streaming. You had to go up there and turn that dial. You was the remote. So when you had that kind of stuff, right? And your parents, you only had one TV. So whatever dad was watching or whatever mom was watching, that's what was being on. That was what was going to be on.
Yep.
Yeah.
They have so many options, and because they have so many options and they can change their option from here to here to here, that's that's what's called. I think that's more to blame of what's going on. We're seeing the side effects of exposing them to electronics too early. We're seeing the side effects of some of our bad choices as adults. Because I remember there was a whole campaign about don't smoke cigarettes while you're pregnant. I ain't never heard a campaign about don't smoke marijuana while you're pregnant.
Because they be doing it.
What's the side effects? I mean, let's call it buck a buck, right? So we're not talking about some of the choices we made as parents, some of the choices we made as adults, some of the things that we've allowed them to do that are causing that now that they're older, we're seeing like, oh my goodness, this is a problem. Yeah, but sometimes we're the ones who cause the problem, not purposely, but we've caused the problem.
Yep. Amen. All right, ladies
Just
and
to
gentlemen.
add to that real quick, I promise,
No,
real
you
quick.
good, boo
Like
boo.
you
You good.
like you were saying, that handed down trauma, because grocery grocery store trips for me wasn't no crystal stair. Therefore, I don't even go to the grocery store now. It gives me so
Anxiety.
much anxiety to just go in the grocery store and get the things that I need and want. I have my stuff either Instacart, DoorDash, or just straight up Kroger delivery. All
Yeah.
because of those grocery store trips being in there for hours. My mom would love to go down each aisle and read stuff and I'm like, how do you not expect me to not ask for these colorful sugary cereal, to ask for this, ask for that, because I've been in here for hours and then we only leave with a few things.
That's probably
So
where the ADHD come
that
from. Them sugary damn cereals that y'all be feeding
yeah.
y'all, that Alan be feeding his children's.
And also, and the one last thing I wanted to point out, um, social media and giving them that unfiltered, unattended,
Mm.
unsupervised access to social media. They are literally fed the aesthetic of depression, anxiety, suicide. It's almost trending. It's trendy.
Yeah,
It
it was a
is
lawsuit.
something
Ooh.
it is something that everybody is doing to where it makes it cool in a sense, and it's like they don't really, if my little brain cannot distinguish between reality and make believe, it's like these content creators, they're
Yeah.
getting money for the amount of times you view that video and the
Right.
amount of comments that they get. So if they're putting out a video of
Hmm.
them sitting on the floor crying, talking about suicide, it's
Yep.
like you're thinking, oh, so that's what we're doing. That's what's going to get me all this money or this lavish lifestyle that I think they are living. So it's like we have to pull back, like you said, Mr. Allen, on that tablet stuff, because giving them that unfiltered, unsupervised, unattended
Mm.
access to those types of things, it definitely has. I've seen an uptick in it, and I really think that it has become sort of an aesthetic, like a trend, something to be a part of. And
Mm-hmm.
it's all because they cannot distinguish between reality and because their frontal lobe or whatever, I don't know much
Yeah.
about brains, but this part of
Yeah.
their brain ain't
It's
really
not fully
developed.
developed. Yeah.
It's not fully developed. So yes, there are children out there who are experiencing real depression, real anxiety, real life trauma, and then there are some out there who are simply imitating what they are seeing mostly on social media.
Yeah. Yep. Sad part. That's a whole nother conversation about that social media, because I think it's a lawsuit going on now against Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook or something like that. It was a white lady that was blaming social media for something that happened to her child. And so it's like a class action suit or something against social media, and then you have that whole argument. Is it the parenting? Is it the parenting and not whatever? Or is it, the social media and its influence altogether? Especially with those video games like Grand Theft Auto and Roblox and all that other. I would like to thank you so much for being on the podcast today. All of your views and your to say to everyone who is listening to the podcast in the new year 2026. We want to always check your mood and protect your peace. Don't let anybody dim your light. Remember that self-awareness is the real flex. Until the next time.